You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
Welcome, listeners, to another episode of All Good Things, a Star Trek Universe podcast here on the BQN and the Fandom Podcast Network. I'm your host, Christos, and with me today is Kristin. Well, hello, Kristin.
Oh, well, hello, Christos. How are you?
I'm great, and this is kind of a monumentous occasion. It's our first time podcasting together.
It is. I'm so excited.
I know, and they left us to ourselves to do it, so it's like, what could go wrong?
Which shenanigans are we going to get into today?
I know. So how are you liking podcasting so far? You're kind of new to the network and new to podcasting?
Yes. Yeah, I have never done anything like this before. I've performed a lot as a musician. I've done a lot of live shows, playing and everything. And this sort of gives me that same rush of performing. So I've really taken to it. I absolutely love it. I get to talk about one of my most favorite topics ever, of course, Star Trek. And I can't be mad about the company that I get to do this with. Y'all are just phenomenal people. So I'm really blessed to have been given this opportunity to test the waters of podcasting. And so far, I am in love. So
that's awesome. Amy's strategy of podcasting so that we can all just kind of hang out and talk Trek is perfect. It's like we're entertaining the masses, but at the same time, we're just hanging out and geeking out and talking Trek, which is what we do best, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So let's jump into our escape pod.
This is the bridge. All hands to emergency escape pods.
Well, listeners, this week we were treated to Season 5, Episode 7 of Star Trek Discovery. Episode is called Erigah. First off, can you believe after this episode, we only have 3 discoveries left and it's all done?
How are they going to wrap it up?
It
seems like we're just getting started, and there's so much room to grow in all of this. And they're like, just kidding, 3 hours and you're done.
Yeah, we literally have 3 hours left, or maybe less. I have a feeling the last episode is going to be a little longer, but especially since they filmed the epilogue. But still, it's like everyone's been saying this, especially this past week, that Discovery's just gotten good. It's kind of found its ground.
Yeah. And
it's already canceled. And it's reminding people of Enterprise season 4. It got really good, and it was like it was too little too late, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Let's just hope they don't end Discovery how they ended Enterprise.
As much as we love you, Troy and Riker, that was not a good episode.
No, we don't need to revisit that for our finale. Let's not just it deserves so much better.
Yeah. Ironically, Discovery is actually now that the Nielsen charts are out for what would be week 3 or episode 3 of this season, and it's in the top 10.
Of course it
Nielsen. Is. Yeah. So it's the 3rd Star Trek show to do that. Picard season 3 did it several times, and so did Strange New World season 2. So here we go. Discovery is a top 10 show.
There we go. I hope that Strange New World sort of hitting the stride maybe a little bit earlier means that it won't have a 5-year curse. Out of all the new Trek, I think Strange New Worlds is my favorite.
Yeah.
So I would love to see that do a full 7-year stretch kind of thing.
Yeah, and then I don't know that I need to see the show turn into the original series, but I would love to see it go more than 5 seasons. It seems like we've only had 20 episodes so far, which is like not nearly enough. So
if we think about the 90s shows, the Next Gens and the Deep Space Nines, if we only got 3 or let's say 5 seasons out of that, that's still 25, 26 episodes a season, right? We're only getting 10 episodes a season.
Yeah.
It's just not enough.
So apparently the big issue with the way TV's made now and the way TV was made then is they used to shoot an episode in 5 to 7 days, maybe 10 if they had to, and then the post-production wasn't nearly as crazy as it is now. So there was room for more episodes, and there's that been that big debate on what is filler and what isn't filler. Sometimes we like the filler episodes because we get more background on our characters and things like that. There's just not a lot of time for that. But so what did you think of this week's episode of Discovery?
I thought it was good. I thought it was really good. Actually, a lot of this episode gave me Star Trek 6 Undiscovered Country vibes, just with their discussion around the table about starting to work with the Breen and trying to be diplomatic with them. Reminded me of this discussion that they were having when it was going out to meet Chancellor Gorkon's ship in Star Trek 6, and Raynor being so against it is very, Kirk being against the idea. And so I'm watching this and thinking, this is really giving me that Undiscovered Country feel. And I loved it. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, and to your point, we talked about this on Let's Fly the other day, and nobody put that together. And Tarina is kind of acting as the Spock of this episode, where she's the logical one and really pushing for diplomacy. Even when Raynor says something, I'm paraphrasing, they don't know what diplomacy is, and she's like, "We shall teach them." And I'm like, "Oh, you go, girl!" But then when she had to get tough, she got tough.
Yeah, I was waiting for at some point for the line, just let them die.
So what are you thinking of Mal and Locke? I mean, this episode's really kind of about them and their relationship with the Breen and their, and where they stand. So what do you think of Locke?
Well, I'm not sure how many spoilers we can do here. So obviously, for those of you who watched all the spoilers. Okay, so he died. For now, I mean, there's that whole thing about bringing someone back to life, and I'm like, are we going there? Are we really going there? But whatever. It was kind of an anticlimactic death, where he just accidentally ODs.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all living in an opioid crisis right now, but I don't know. I thought there were better ways to have written off his character if that's what they wanted to do. But because I really liked them as a couple. I thought that yes, they did have a very strong trauma bond, which isn't always the basis for a strong and long-lasting relationship. But I thought that the two actors had good chemistry on screen. And
for sure.
I really enjoyed their relationship. When she showed their little matching tattoos and showed that they were married, I was like, oh, that's so sweet. And then he dies. I'm like, okay, well.
Yeah, I think they're the baddies, but are they the baddies? I think the Breen are the baddies this season. And I think, Locke is like he's like the anti-Breen. He doesn't want to be Breen. He doesn't want to his culture, he just wants to go live his life. Yeah. So he's an interesting lens to get introduced to the Breen, because we really don't know crap about the Breen. We didn't know. I mean, DS9 only did so much to tell us about them, right? So we're learning about them now, and it's really interesting to look at it from somebody who doesn't want the culture.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. It reminds me of, I forget his name, but the young Cardassian boy on Deep Space Nine, when he's reintroduced, and how against his culture he is as well. And we always see that, where people grapple with the reality of where they come from and how they overcome the history of their past.
Yeah.
The same term, but the reality of who they are and where they come from can be hard for some people to accept. So
yeah, I'm also, it also reminds me of Galdo Kat's daughter. What's her name?
Zial.
Yeah. She was very I could care less about, our traditions,
Alexander Rashenko, same thing with him. His mom always taught him that he didn't have to have anything to do with Klingons if he didn't want to, and he really didn't want to. So
what we're really learning is this has been done before.
I mean, it's an important plot point, though, especially when it comes, because those are all different species, right? So we're learning about how people from their species are going to come to grips with how they have acted over the century or the millennia.
Well, the episode was really fast-paced. A lot happened in the hour, and it really, I felt like this was like that pivotal episode that sets up, the remainder of the season, right? We have 3 left, right? And it's getting close to the finale, and things really kind of had to start coming together, and it did. We're back at Federation HQ. We've got the Breen coming in. Now the Breen are officially the baddies, right? They're kind of like how the Borg showed up late in Picard season 3. Like, oh yeah, now we know who our baddie is. And it's all starting to, like, everything's starting to coalesce and go. And, we had Stamets and working on, kind of the only one that was really focused on the progenitor topic in this episode, while everybody else is freaking out about the Breen. So Book and Stamets kind of figure out what the next step is. And we're off to get the last piece of the puzzle. And here we are.
There we are.
So any predictions for how you think this is all going to go down?
I couldn't even hazard a guess. I find that the writers of Discovery have been really good at going the direction that no one thought that they would go, to keep things interesting and to keep things not predictable. And I enjoy that. Like, I wouldn't have guessed that Locke would have died so early. I really hope they don't bring him back to life, though. It's just,
it's been done.
I mean, it's been done, and as somebody who has, like, seen, like, Pet Sematary and stuff, you're not supposed to bring, sometimes dead is better, right? It just, don't bring them back. So.
Yeah.
And it's been done with Spock, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it's been done so many times, right? Like, everyone's even like, dead isn't even dead in Star Trek. So everyone's just kind of like, eh. So it would be nice if they actually kept him dead. And that would be the surprise.
I mean, I would have loved for them to have had their happily ever after, but they don't. So.
Yeah. My 2 predictions for how over the next 3 episodes is going to be 2 things. Rayner will die. And I think that the progenitor's secret is going to be something that is either destroyed or hidden, or, like, it's going to be deemed too powerful for anyone to have. And they're going to flush it, so to speak.
Kind of like the Omega
thing
on Voyager, where it's too perfect to exist.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite Voyager episodes, by the way.
Too.
I love it.
So your prediction about Rayner dying, do you think he's going to die at the hands of a Breen? Or do you think he's going to die protecting a Breen?
I think it'll be him finding some sort of redeeming quality in the Breen is what I would expect, because he's the prejudiced one of this season, right? And he's got, of course, they gave him good backstory in this episode with his planet being attacked and by the Breen and whatnot, and his whole family being killed by the Breen. So now we get his motivation and why he is this way. So, he'll for him to be redeemed as a character, in a sense, he'll need to come to grips with his xenophobia.
It'll be interesting to see how this all gets wrapped up. So
for sure.
Yeah. We're all invested.
Right. Stay tuned. So let's jump to our topic of the week. We are going through part 3 of our series of Transporter Malfunctions with the TOS episode, The Enemy Within, which I believe was like episode 6 of the original series. So this was like I think to start framing our conversation, this is early days of Star Trek. Like they're still figuring the world out.
Yeah.
So, Kristin, do you want to give us the plot of this episode?
So, in classic Trek fashion, the transporter malfunctions, and it beams up good Kirk, and then a few seconds later, covered in Vaseline and eyeliner, bad Kirk appears, and he wreaks havoc on the ship. Meanwhile, the poor rest of the away team is stuck on the planet because they can't get to them because, heaven forbid, they beam them up into parts. Rather, let's leave them in freezing cold weather. And I think those are the main A and B plots.
Yep.
And then there's a lot of other unique storylines that occur throughout those two plots.
You teed that up very nicely. So what's your first impression of this episode?
Ooh.
Well, that was very Bluesky. I loved it.
I think that's literally what I did at the end of it. Is I was just like, ooh.
You know,
was this on TV?
I get a lot of flack on this particular show because I am not the biggest fan of TOS, and it's episodes like this that are why. Now, I will say this episode has a lot of firsts for Star Trek, and we're going to get into some of that later. And I always say you could not have gotten to where we are in Star Trek without the original series. So I will be forever thankful to it. It is what it is, but I will say nearly 60 years later, some of these episodes are super problematic, and this is one of them.
Yeah. Kind of catching on to what you were just saying, I also think to see where Trek started and where we are now shows so much growth in the franchise. And I don't know many other franchises that have that level of evolution throughout their story, throughout their ethos, throughout their philosophies, etc., to show and really reflect what society is. And Trek is very much a mirror to where we are and where we can go. So I do want to say, as hard as some of these original series episodes can be to watch, I think they're really important to continually take stock as to the growth that Trek has had as a franchise.
That was very well put. And like I said, there's a lot of good things in this episode, and we're going to touch on that. But it's not, and to your point about it being, we have all this evolution and growth in our franchise, this franchise going on, like I said, getting close to 60 years. I don't know of too many other fandoms that are this old, maybe Doctor Who.
Yeah, not Star Wars. Star Wars is the 70s. So we've got at least 10 years on Star Wars.
Not to mention Star Wars had, that really big gap between 1983 and 98, 99, when they had a 15-year pause in there. So where nothing really happened other than the novels getting started and a couple of bad Ewok movies and cartoons.
The Christmas special.
Yeah. There is a documentary out about the Star Wars Christmas special now. It's actually very interesting to watch. I forget what it's called, but it's new. You can get it on iTunes. So
okay, I will be watching that.
It's like and it's cheap too. It's like I think it was like not even $10 to buy, and I'm like, yes, I'm watching this tonight.
Perfect.
So transporter malfunction. So I will say, for the sake of our episode, this is the first time maybe a transporter malfunction happens in Star Trek. So it was an original idea when this was done. So we have to really stop comparing it to everything that comes after, because when this happened, it was an original idea. So, we see this magnetic ore get all over Fisher, and then Fisher beams up, and that corrupts the transporter. And I did love that they kind of had that scanner on him. And this was some really like ingenuity and thinking out,
Mhm.
you know, back in 1966, like I said, episode 6, like, oh yeah, we have this scanner and it's, you know, it looked like a hair dryer, but hey, you know, I give it a pass.
It
And
probably was.
yeah, let's face it.
Look,
And
painted.
yeah, and I love that, you know, I love that we have like, you know, geological officers on board, scientists and things like that. So there's a lot of cool things about the beginning of this episode. And then, you know, Fisher is fine because whatever it was, he beamed up and then it got into the system. So Fisher's okay.
Yeah.
Kirk beams up a few minutes later. I'm all on board with the way this starts off, right? Kirk beams up. He's a little disoriented. Scotty's helping him. But then the transporter turns itself back on and we get
Yeah.
bad Kirk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and I find that throughout the rest of the series, then this kind of set the theme for one type of transporter malfunction, which is the separation of a self. And then there's the other transporter malfunction, which is the merging of multiple selves, and then etc., where either someone just dies or they turn into children. So
yeah, you know, I know it wasn't the same type of catalyst, but there's a Voyager episode called Faces, and I think the Vidians capture Torres.
Yeah.
And they literally split her into two people, one human, one Klingon, and they're both very different. And I just, you know, so of course Voyager would, if anything, be lending itself to TOS. It's not like, you know, but it did, you know, remind me direct, you know, of that episode. Like, oh yeah, there was an episode when this kind of went down already. For me, because I saw the Voyager episode before I ever saw this TOS episode. So I'm looking at it the other way around. Full transparency, TOS happened first, obviously.
yes.
So like I said, there's some good things about this, but then shall we jump into this idea of we have split Kirk into the good versus the bad. Jekyll and this was actually inspired by the Jekyll and Hyde story. So I mean, that's actually, I know I put that in our script, but that's not me. That is actually what the writer had in mind.
Have you ever read the original Jekyll and Hyde?
No, I've seen, you know, variations of movies and whatnot, but I've never read it.
I would encourage you to read the original book by Robert Louis Stevenson. It is a very good story. It is a very, very good story, and really shows one's struggle to grapple with the maybe not great qualities that a person can have in them. And we definitely see that, I think, come out fantastically with Bad Kirk, because he was awful. He was really, really awful. And so, watching, I wonder how uncomfortable it was for Shatner to play this role, or did he enjoy the ability to let this part of him really come out? I don't know.
That's a good question. And actually, I was going to say, I wanted to give a kudos to Kirk, or get kudos to Shatner. He often gets, his acting is, you know, it's almost a trope to like make fun of his acting, right? Yeah. And he actually does a good job with Bad Kirk, making him over the top. It's kind of campy, and campy in a good way, right? You know, and of course, the directing choices that were used to highly illustrate to the audience that this is Bad Kirk versus Good Kirk, with the guy liner and the sweat and all that stuff. So, and the weird horror type close-ups, like it. And
from the bottom up, or they had like some sort of light kind of casting the shadows.
Yeah, so that lighting angle with the, you know, the grotesque and the lighting from the bottom up and whatnot, it does remind me of like whatever happened to Baby Jane with, you know, Joan Crawford and Bette Davis. And of course, this was only a few years after that. So that type of directing technique was obviously still something employed at that time.
And again, you know, they didn't have the CGI and all the post-pro that we have now. So they had to be creative. So I did enjoy how they differentiated the two. And I guess this was also the first appearance of the green wrap uniform, which was used on Good Kirk so that the audience could differentiate that good Kirk was in the green and bad Kirk was in the gold.
Yeah. And that's a really good point, because I was wondering about that. I was like, oh, this is great, because now good Kirk is in green, bad Kirk is in the regular uniform. And like, did develop just to help us with, that point, like help the audience, and it's effective.
Yes, it is. Because the scene with the two Kirks in Undiscovered Country, not to go back to that movie again, but when Iman turns into a Kirk and they're going back and forth, I was like, how do you know? Like, you couldn't tell who was who. It was exact. So sometimes I like to know which twin to root for.
Yeah. And the end of this episode, when they're on the bridge, they're both in the green wrap, but it's very clear, which I'm glad. It's very clear which one is the bad Kirk or evil Kirk. So that is the crux of this episode really is, I mean, it comes into that Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, good Kirk can't survive without the bad Kirk can't survive without the good Kirk. So, I guess the question I'm going to pose for discussion is, do we all have a good and a bad side, and how do we balance them?
I think it's hard just to just throw out a dichotomy as good versus bad. There is a spectrum of behaviors, of emotions, and they all have to be interpreted. This is just my opinion anyway. They all have to be interpreted from what is called the sociological lens, which is a term put out by C. Wright Mills, I believe, in the 1930s, where when you're looking at one's behaviors and one's actions, you look at a biography versus history. So who they are as a person, meaning where they are in their life. And that helps for you to see where their behaviors and where their actions are coming from. So even going back to when Data is grappling with emotions and he's talking to Troy about, is anger a bad emotion? Is rage a bad emotion? And she says, well, emotions aren't just good or bad. It depends on what you're doing. If you're getting mad about an injustice, then that's actually good, even though being angry is not always seen as a positive emotion. So it's hard to kind of say. I think we do need both, and we need to keep both in check and recognize that we have maybe those shadow sides of us, but just stopping and taking stock and not judging ourselves for having them, because everybody does.
Yeah. It kind of gets into that trope of we got an angel sitting on one shoulder and the devil sitting on the other, which I am very non-religious, so that can go out the window. I liken it to, like, as a gay man, we can be pretty snarky, right? You know what I mean? We love the inappropriate, and we love to say what's on our mind, and we love the absolute candor, as they say. And in special, I should say, in protected groups, mostly, we'll say exactly what we're thinking. And sometimes that's not always the most politically correct thing to say or whatnot. But it kind of gets into that, like, shock comic type stuff too. Like, I don't know, like a Lisa Lampanelli or whatnot, who say absurd things, but it's also meant to be a lens to make us think about things. Or like a Joan Rivers. If Joan Rivers had lived, she's been dead for 10 years now. If Joan Rivers had, I know, I see your face. If she had lived, she would have been canceled by today's terms, for the things that come out of her mouth. But sometimes laughing at the inappropriate or the bad or whatnot, it's kind of a healthy way for us to look at life, I think. And, maybe not a direct tie back to our topic here, but yes, we all have like that snarky thing. When someone says something to you, you always have the thing that you say and the thing that you want to say. Maybe that's the better way of saying that.
And I work in the public service, so I deal a lot with families of individuals living with disabilities, and sometimes this is it, for all the right reasons, they are advocating hard for their loved one. But a lot of times it comes over as very accusatory, the government's trying to X, Y, and Z, whatever. And I have to just be very, very diplomatic with my response. And then I get home and Justin and I pour a glass of wine to unwind after our day. And I'll be like, you'll have no idea what this bitch said to me today.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think as we get further along in our careers, right, and you have to have a public face on, that's a good word for it. Yes, we have to have that forward facing me, but you need to have your outlet for all that stuff. Because I think if you keep that all chumped up inside, right, it's like you're just going to explode one day. It's not healthy, so you have to have an outlet for that, that you call it the bad side, the realistic side, the, whatever you want to call it. We have to have that outlet. And I think it keeps us from getting too far out of check,
Absolutely. And, just even good emotions can tip over to be not great. And we kind of saw that with Kirk, right? He was supposed to be the quote unquote good Kirk, but suddenly he was really indecisive and unable to move forward and unable to be the captain that people needed him to be. And is that because his ability to make these harsh decisions was completely done away with? And so, we kind of need our whole selves, but
I think it's a really good way of looking at it. Kirk, as the longer Kirk was separated, the more unfunctional each one of them, good and bad Kirk, became. So it's kind of like the further apart they got from each other in time, the more, frozen they become in some ways. They can't make decisions. There was a few things with that too. Like I thought, by today's standards of Star Trek, Spock would have relieved him of duty, or McCoy would have relieved him of duty much earlier. Yeah. I mean, it didn't really even happen, actually.
No. And shall we talk about the storyline with Yeoman Janice?
Rand.
Which, as a woman, that was very hard to watch.
As a man, it was hard to. I mean, as a sensitized, well-rounded gay man, that was hard to watch.
Yeah, because the statistics show 1 in 4 women will be sexually assaulted in their lifetime, and a lot of the issues that still come up is victim blaming. So, what could the women have done differently to not be in this situation? And that's really hard, because watching what happened in the episode, she was just in her quarters after a shift, and she's fixing her hair. Maybe she's gonna go to Tim Ford and have some dinner, and next thing we know, she's being attacked. And then at the end of the episode, seeing how Spock almost kind of insinuated that maybe she should have enjoyed it, or she shouldn't be so upset about it, when he was like, well, he had some pretty interesting qualities. Hey, and then the smirk on his face. I was like, Spock would never.
Yeah.
Would never. And where was a victim advocate to support her while she had to face her attacker. I mean, there was just so much going on there where I was like, this is I was physically cringing during these scenes.
Yeah, the scene where the attack happens is one thing. Okay, that's being depicted. This is what's happening. Was it a lot for 1966 television? I wasn't alive then, so I couldn't tell you. It did seem to me like a lot, and pretty graphic. But then what really bothers me is the scene in sickbay afterwards, where there is no victim's advocate there. That really should be McCoy, I guess, in the room, but he's really not. And, you have all these guys standing up. She's sitting down. In a real world, they wouldn't have Kirk in the same room as her. It would not. That's not how that would work. There would be a head of security conducting an investigation. They would be separated. And, I mean, if it were Dr. Crusher's sickbay, that would have been a much different scene, But of course, I get it. It's 1966. And I guess this is the reason why when I tell people I don't enjoy watching TOS, I don't want to watch attempted rape, and I don't want to watch the victim, have it explained, have it turned around on her. You know what I mean? I guess that's not entertaining to me. And I don't, and for all the good that is Star Trek that's out of it, I'll watch it for the historical, and I'll watch it for this awesome discussion we're having about it. But this is why it's stuff like this that makes TOS cringy to me.
Yeah. But then going back to sort of, again, what I'd mentioned earlier about, it's interesting to see how things progress. Because then just a few decades later in TNG, I forget the episode, but it's the one where, what is it? Beverly, Riker, and Troy are all essentially
Violations.
Thank you. And the different ways that they were dealt with, where the offender's dad came in and was like, we will support you through your recovery. You are going to get whatever you need as a victim here. Let us, walk you through this. You don't have to see him again. And I was like, that's how that episode actually came to mind while I was watching this TOS, thinking the two ways that this subject was handled were completely 180s from one another. And I don't know. It was just hard to watch.
Yeah, exactly. And it really, I was watching this and I'm like, I'm watching this. I can't believe this is happening. And it's like, and I can't remember. I know I've seen certain parts of this episode before. And maybe I saw it like 20, 30 years ago, and my lens of looking at it was a lot different.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why I don't remember it this way. But in 2024, wow.
Mm-hmm.
But
the other part of this episode that bothered me, and this was when I was doing my research on, fun trivia. Well, not so fun trivia, was the treatment of the dog on this episode.
Yeah. As a vegan, I was really bothered.
Yeah, as a non-meat eater myself, very bothered. Where this episode, and when it got out, the treatment of this dog was actually one of the case studies used to enact the American, essentially like the SPCA being on different filming sets and making sure that the animals are treated correctly. Because to keep the good dog, subdued, they gave it a tranquilizer. And then to make it angry, they starved it and then poked it with a stick before filming. And that's how they got the aggressive growls from this little dog. And I'm reading this and it's like, no.
Yeah.
You're already putting it in a costume. No, what? I mean,
yeah.
What? No.
I was going to say it's already in cosplay, or in a and then it's dead.
And then it dies.
And it's basically sacrificed as a test animal, basically, too, at the end, to add insult to injury. So I will reframe. I will also just reiterate, listeners, love Star Trek and whatnot, but when we're going to go back and take deep dives into some of these episodes, we're going to be realistic about them. And I'm not going to sit there and smile and tell you that our Star Trek is good and everything was perfect and rosy. So I'm going to be real with y'all.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure this is one episode of Trek that will never end up on the improv night on the cruise. Mm-hmm. I can't see Denise Crosby sitting up there trying to improv over this scene. Just no.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
And we'll get into some of the trivia and continuity here, which I think is what this episode's positive legacy is here. Mm-hmm. So, well, first off, let's talk about some assimilations and regenerations of this. And I loved that when they're down in engineering, Spock and Good Kirk, and they're looking for Bad Kirk, which, by the way, I would never, once we knew we had Good Kirk, I would never have left him alone. I would have kept him on the bridge, kept him in the ready room, whatever it was. I would never have I would put 2 security guards with him and never have left him by himself. That would have been me being good captain, or good first officer. But Bad Kirk is just about to shoot Good Kirk, and Spock shows up just in time with the Vulcan nerve pinch. And I just thought that was yay, perfect. I love that. I kind of it was good timing.
Yes. Apparently the original script had Spock karate chopping Bad Kirk, giving him a what for.
Yeah.
And Nimoy said that coming from a pacifist alien species like the Vulcans, he would not use violence. He would find a non-violent intervention.
Yeah.
So that's sort of where the nerve pinch came from. And
yeah,
I think this is really a great start of watching Nimoy create the Vulcan species. And how much fun would it have been to have that creative freedom to make something like this happen, and all of the mannerisms that we're using 60 years later, like the Vulcan salute, all of that was just on the fly thinking from Nimoy. It's really cool, and pulling from his culture and his past and his reality into this. So
I'll read you just a little excerpt I had here in the trivia for later, because it's perfect timing for this discussion. This was the first episode to be produced to show the Vulcan nerve pinch, as well as the first time McCoy says, "He's dead, Jim." Leonard Nimoy objected to the script's directive that Spock Kaios, or karate chops, as you said, negative Kirk on the head. So he improvised the neck pinch on the spot and demonstrated it on William Shatner for director Leo Penn. The script's original directive survives to this day in the James Blish adaptation of this episode, as Blish only had access to the scripts and not the finished episodes. So there you go. It was literally Nimoy on the set as they're filming, to your point, creating something that 60 years later is still an integral part of what people think of when they think of a Vulcan or Star Trek.
Yep. The three things that always come up with for me when I think of Vulcans is that the salute, the nerve pinch, and the mind meld.
I would go for a fourth to say idic.
Idic?
Infinite diversity and infinite combinations. Yes. All right. So I am also going to give you a thumbs up assimilation to the campy use of our bad close-ups. We discussed this a little bit earlier. The guy liner, which I do sometimes, by the way. I wear guy liner sometimes because it really makes my eyes pop and, kind of gives me that little mysterious, Middle Eastern flair, which, is exotic.
Absolutely.
So why it's determined to be a bad thing, I don't know.
You know what ruined it? And I'm sorry to say I was part of it, was the early 2000 emos, where the guy liner just, it took on a whole new life, and guys were just smearing that right over their eyes. But again, I don't mind. Express yourself however you want. If you want to wear a full beat, wear a full. I don't care, as long as if I come up and ask, where did you get that? The product name and can point me in the right direction. Exactly. That's all I care about. Exactly. So, because it's funny, the first scene you see with him, all I noticed with Bad Kirk was his eyes look fantastic, and look at those lashes.
I know. I'm like I've got dark skin, and I've got green eyes, and so when I do a little guy liner, they pop, and and they did in this episode for William Shatner. Yeah. So we're going to call that a thumbs up, I guess.
Yay.
Do you have anything else? Any other assimilations? Anything you really liked about this episode?
I enjoyed the banter between the main cast and the non-main cast. A lot of times they really don't have lines, like a lot of lines, but they really did in this, whether it was on the planet or in engineering, where they're just sort of talking back and forth. I was like, this is cute. I like that they're actually showing these one-time characters have a personality and have a sense of humor in a few spots. So I liked that.
Yeah. Early Star Trek did not, really pull together immediately the 7 main stars of the show, right? The way, Chekhov wasn't even in season 1, right? So, and, Sulu was in and out at the beginning. And so you kind of had you kind of had these randos coming and going, filling in the crew until you got it down to, well, these are our main 7, and these are the people who get 98% of the lines in a script. All right, let's move on to regenerations. So my first big There's a few beefs in here, but my biggest beef was the temperatures on the planet that they're reading off. Like, I think at one point they say 140 below zero. Did I imagine that? Yeah. Sulu would have been like instantly frozen and dead.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm from Canada. So there was a few things going on there where at first I thought they said it is minus 120. I'm thinking, y'all just standing there, not even shivering? No, not a chance. But then I rewatched it and they said, no, it gets down to that. So I have a friend and she is a heavy duty mechanic and she works up in the camps, the oil camps, like way, way, way up north in a little tiny place called Fort McMurray. And during the winter, the nights get down to about a minus 50 degrees. So that's only about half of what they were talking about here. And her camp has a rule that even if you are walking from one building to another, like not even a 1 minute walk, you have to be fully covered from head to toe because walking outside will do immediate physical damage to you. So that's only at minus 50. So minus 120, showing them wrapped in those little blankets and then they're just fine. No.
Yeah.
No.
And I love the early, and this would be an assimilation and a regeneration. I love like, okay, yes, we can use our phasers to heat rocks. I mean, that's something we've seen many times in Star Trek.
Yeah.
But one of the phasers breaks like almost right away. And then maybe that's a function of it being so cold, it broke. But if it can break electronics, what can it do to biological tissue? I mean,
yeah. And I love how nonchalant McCoy was after. He's like, oh, they'll be fine. They just have some frostbite.
Yeah, exactly. He's just like, hey, let's get back to our brandy. You know, he'll be all right. I think he's going to be fine. Like we're not rushing them to sick bay to start treatment. I mean, like, you know, Chapel's got this. You know.
Yeah.
We talked about Rand. So, what about the other big obvious in this episode, which was, where's our shuttle bay? Why can't we send a shuttle down to pick them up?
Oh, yeah. You know, a little bit of a plot hole there where they could have done. They made a comment where they beamed them down some equipment, and again, that didn't end up. It ended up breaking or malfunctioning, like a heater or something. But you're right. Is they still have shuttlecraft, and I know that the point of the invention of transporters in the first place with Star Trek was to save money because it's a lot cheaper to film just, you know, going from one spot to another as opposed to the journey in a shuttlecraft. But I mean, they're still there.
Exactly. And so, listeners, I am well aware of the fact that basically the show had not created the shuttlecraft yet. Although we do see the Enterprise have the bay in the back of the Enterprise, it had not. The shuttle bay had never been shown yet, and of course, the Galileo one had never been shown yet. So it had yet to be invented as part of the show, and that is the out of universe reason we don't see a shuttle. But when you look at it with today's Star Trek, you know, with everything we know about Star Trek, the first thing you would say, what about a shuttle? All right, so let's jump into our trivia. I kind of renamed this trivia in continuity because there are just fun things in here. So do you want to read that first one there, Kristin?
Yeah, so this episode marks the first time on screen that Kirk is duplicated in some form or fashion. This repeats again through What Are Little Girls Made Of, Whom Gods Destroy, The Survivor, and, of course, Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country.
Which we mentioned. So, yeah, but reminding ourselves, this was the first time. It's and that, so it was an original idea back then. Spock's log entry in this episode calls himself Second Officer Spock. However, in Court Martial, the computer lists him as First Officer Spock. From then on is referred to as First Officer until his return in Star Trek the Motion Picture as simply Science Officer, which in Motion Picture Decker was serving as First Officer or XO, as you know, so that makes sense.
Yes. And shall we can also, one thing about the motion picture is we want to talk about Transporter Malfunctions. I think the Transporter Malfunction at the beginning of the motion picture is probably one of the most traumatic ones throughout all of Trek.
Yeah, it's horror. It's
That scene.
Yeah. It's definitely taking advantage of going to the big screen. Although I think wasn't the motion picture, it was going to be rated G, but they had to do some things they didn't want it to be rated G. So they did some things, and that might have been one of them, to make it not be rated G, because they didn't want to like make it sound like a kid's movie.
Right. It's funny though, when if my mom was out and we were at home with dad, it was always watching Star Trek or some other 80s action movie. So I think the first time I saw that scene, I was about 8 or 9. And I remember watching it just like, what is happening?
Yeah.
So
I think we're in the same boat there. I think between that transporter scene and the thing that goes into Chekhov's ear in Wrath of Khan, they have a lot to do with me just being traumatized as a child.
Yeah. And then in Search for Spock, when they find all those big bugs that have evolved.
The microbes that have,
Oh, I think that's where a fear of a lot of bugs came for me, was when it tried to kill Christopher Lloyd. And I was just like, no.
Yeah. I mean, even thinking that there might be sharks in the swimming pool, we'll blame that on Jaws, but like, there's a lot of things, man. There's a reason why we probably weren't supposed to watch movies at a young age. There's a reason those ratings existed. And when our parents said we shouldn't watch something, there was a reason.
Absolutely. I still can't go in the ocean without thinking that I'm just going to get gobbled up by a great white. This episode establishes that the Phaser 2 unit consists of a Phaser 1 unit fitted into a pistol mount. Sulu can be seen doing this just before he phasers the rocks for warmth. This procedure is not seen in any other episode.
And the sequence of aired episodes, this is the first episode where we see or hear the new middle initial for James Kirk, Captain James T. Kirk, is briefly visible as negative Kirk enters Kirk's quarters. The initial was first spoken in Mudd's Women, but that episode aired after this one, The Enemy Within. So interesting. So that's where the T gets introduced. And didn't he have a different T? It was a different initial earlier. Like, it was one of the things that got changed. That's why I think the new middle initial, I forget what it was, but it's referred to as something else in a prior episode. But the T,
not Tiberius?
Not Tiberius, yeah. But I forget what it was, but it changed and obviously stuck with this episode.
I remember when I was younger and thought that if I ever decided to have children and I had a boy, I would name him Tiberius. And then just Ty for short, so he can go through life with just calling him Ty, but his full name would be Tiberius. So maybe it's really good I didn't have kids. That poor soul would have been like, Mom, what are you naming me over here?
Yeah. I hear you. I'm like, I would probably name my kid something weird. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
So final thoughts on The Enemy Within, and how do you feel maybe it compares to some of the other episodes in the series, such as Lower Decks, Much Ado About Boimler, and Enterprise's Daedalus?
It's hard to compare because they're lifetimes apart. Really, there's so much that has happened, but again, I love to see that evolution and that growth within the series, and I think this helps to show it both from a sociological and a technological perspective, how much they've changed. But I think the trope of transporter malfunctions is a really good one. I never get tired of those episodes when they show up in the series, and I just think that it is a realistic thing when you're pulling people apart molecule by molecule and sending them through space to reform. Accidents are going to happen.
Yeah.
So I get Loxana Troy and McCoy's fear of using them. So.
And Pawlowski.
Yes. Oh, Pawlowski.
Yeah. Actually, side note, I was listening to Women at Warp the other day, and they had Una McCormick on, who is one of my favorite Star Trek authors. And just in passing, they brought up the novel The Missing, which is a DS9 novel that Una McCormick wrote. And in that novel, of course, this is all in the, the Elseworld of Star Trek fiction that's been coded out. But Beverly is now the CMO of DS9, and Pawlowski is there with her, and they're solving a problem together. But it attacks that trope that fans kind of think that they would be catty toward each other for some reason, and that's two strong women being pitted against each other in a bad way, whereas they would probably work really well together.
Yeah.
So I like, I bought it Friday. It showed up yesterday. And so I'll be reading that.
Oh, I'm going to have to get that one too. That sounds really good. And that whole idea that they would have been angry with each other or catty with each other and not work well. I think what a lot of people constantly forget is in the world of Trek, the need for competition has really been diminished because everybody's working towards the same goal. Everybody is there for the betterment of mankind. They're not there just to see their own wealth and prestige become accumulated. So when we talk about where we are now looking for promotions and raises and all of that, it's because that is the society in which we find ourselves. But to take that same ethos and transpose it into the Trek world it's not an apples to apples thing. They're not there to see. They know that they're skilled. They know that they have something to offer the Federation, and they are going to play what role the Federation needs them to play. And they're working towards that end goal. So, yeah.
It was really well said. I like that. All right. And once again, we're off on a tangent talking about Crusher and Pawlowski, which, it's okay. I mean, I think for me, my final thoughts are, if you want to talk about who did it better, I mean, this was a pretty good, cringy stuff aside, the plot of this episode, I think, is really well thought out, and it's plausible. And hey, for 1966, someone's thinking, hey, like a magnetic ore might F up the transporter, and I like that idea because everything else that comes after is a trope at this point, right?
Yeah.
By the time we get to Enterprise and Lower Decks, it's like, oh, it's the transporter malfunction episode, right? Whereas this was the first time, and I think from a story standpoint, or the way from a plot standpoint, it was done right. Do I agree with some of the other, script choices? Obviously not. But from a who did it better, I liked this episode, I'll say. So,
what shows are on BQN, you ask? Well, here's a rundown of some podcasts you might be interested in. All Good Things, a Star Trek Universe podcast covering all of Trek, hosted by Amy, Mark, Christos, Kelvin, and Kristin. Whether you've got Xbox or Nintendo, check out Bargain Bin Gamer, a YouTube show hosted by Davey, a self-proclaimed gamer who specializes in reviewing and showcasing affordable video games. 2 episodes enter the arena, 1 comes out victorious. Join hosts Joe and Kevin, and a guest, as they debate which should win the Batleth battle. Grab your popcorn as you listen to Cinema Z, a film discussion and review podcast showcasing films you probably missed, but should definitely check out. Hosted by Mark and Matt. Don your apron for The Food Replicator, where Matthew eats and drinks his way through the Star Trek cocktail and 3 cookbooks. Beam Aboard Galaxy Class, a Star Trek Next Generation podcast covering all of TNG, hosted by Steven. In order to not repeat it, listen to History with the Szilagys, a snippet of historical events from around the world, hosted by Chrissy and Jason. For the newest Trek coverage, check out Infinite Diversity, hosted by Chrissy and Thad. Curl up with a good book and delve into beta canon with Peter, host of the online Trek Book Club on Twitter, and his new companion, Trek Book Club podcast. Test your Trek knowledge with Trexperts Quiz, a Star Trek quiz show hosted and written by Davey. Whether you're a member of Starfleet Federation or Planetary Union, go check out Union Federation, covering current Star Trek and the Orville, which we all know is really a Trek show, hosted by Kyle, Kevin, Amy, and Haley. Head over to YouTube and watch The View Screen live on Sundays, your Trek-inspired talk show hosted by Calvin and Amy, with Season 2 starting in September for a 10-week run. Spill the tea with Christos while he discusses current Trek news and events and explores the world of fandom via guest interviews, all with a LGBTQIA+ perspective on What's the T-Bev. And for our Patreon members, we have the Hive Mind with monthly script readings, Let's Fly, a Discovery reaction show, It's Green, a cornucopia of topics, Amy's Math Moments, a quick look at math moments in Star Trek. We know you have a choice of podcasts to choose from, and we thank you for listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
We hope you'll join us for next week's episode, which continues our time travel series with Voyager's Time and Again. I'm not even sure I remember what that one's about. So that's what's great about this show is that, like, I know I've probably seen it 5 times, but like, I'll go watch it again and like be like, oh, I love this episode.
Yeah, just like with songs, right? I don't always know the title, but you play it, I'm like, oh, that one. Yeah, I know it word for word. I just don't know the title of it.
I am an expert in titles for TNG, but I am not like with the other series. I'm good sometimes. I'm not so good other times. So yes, but we all know it's about time travel, so that's going to fit right in.
Perfect. We would love to hear what you thought of today's episode and hope you'll join our Facebook group, the BQN Collective, or on our Discord server to continue our discussion there. You can also reach us at All Good Things on X, formerly known as Twitter, and Bluesky. Please follow the network on Twitter, Bluesky, and Instagram at BQN Podcasts. We've also partnered with our friends at the Fandom Podcast Network, where you can find us by searching their master feed. Links can be found in the show notes. So, Christos, where can people find you?
You can find me on the BQN Collective on Facebook. You can find me in Discord, our Discord server there, spending a lot of time over there. In fact, it's getting so big, sometimes I have to mute it. There could be a lot of notifications when I'm at work. But that's just great. That just shows us how much our listeners are getting involved. And I love it. And you can also find me on Instagram at What's the T-Bev and over on What's the T-Bev here on BQN. And Kristin, where can people find you when you're not being split into your Jekyll and Hyde self by the transporter?
I have found myself not being as social on social media recently. Sometimes I do, like you said, I find it overwhelming when too many notifications show up. But nonetheless, I am on Facebook. Find me in the BQN network. I am on Instagram at KStrats. I need to join Discord though. I've heard that it's really become the go-to. So I will probably be looking at giving that a try. And then I'm also on Reddit at user Garrick's Fan Club.
I love that. If you would like to help us keep all of our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. For just $1 a month, you can join our Let's Fly reaction show, script readings, and enjoy our special patron-only shows of It's Green and Amy's Math Moments. Visit patreon.com/BQN to get all the details and watch your messages.
If becoming a patron isn't your thing, you can still support the show by sharing our posts on social media, talking about it with your friends, or hitting the subscribe button on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts and leaving us a star rating and written review. That helps others to find the show.
At this time, we would like to thank our own associate producers, Mahendran Radhakrishnan and Jenediah Seastrum. A special thanks to Graham Kelly for our opening and closing music and to Mark White for our artwork each and every week.
thank you for listening, and we hope you'll join us
as we search out all good things.